I just had so much to do, keeping people together, keeping their limbs attached to their body.
We were in international waters. It was a beautiful day. You couldn't mistake us, and our flag was flying, for crying out loud.
They were there to kill us, and it just didn't register. Here they were, Israeli people, and they were going to try to kill us. It was just a very, very appalling situation.
A strange quiet descended on the Liberty crew. After the explosion, the pounding of machine gun bullets slowed and stopped. Fires were put out. The stunned, angry, and exhausted crew caught their collective breath. Limping at 5 knots toward sanctuary several hundred miles to the north, they had somehow survived one of the most ferocious sustained attacks ever on an American ship. 34 were dead, 171 were wounded. All survivors had mental scars. There is not one single life raft. The wounded are treated. Sailors remember that they were promised help. They expected that help. That help, in the form of phantom jets from the USS Saratoga, was on its way. It never arrived. It would be the next morning, 17 hours after the attack began, before they would see an American face. Finally, the USS Davis and later the USS Massey came alongside the Liberty. Many of their sailors wept as they boarded the Liberty, saw open decks stained with American blood and parts of American bodies on the deck. Helicopters from the USS America arrived several hours later to medevac the most seriously wounded Liberty sailors back to that carrier. The air attack by 2 squadrons of Israeli aircraft, French-built Mirage 3s and Super Mystères, 821 rocket and cannon holes were found in the Liberty. Canisters of napalm had torched the ship. After the ferocious air attack, Liberty was pounded by 3 Israeli torpedo boats. One of their 6 torpedoes struck the Liberty, left a gaping hole at the water line. There were thousands of holes from armor-piercing machine gun bullets. They sank life rafts, shot at firefighters and stretcher bearers, at the bridge and into the engine room.
Dr. Kiefer and his pharmacist mates performed in heroic fashion, as did all of the crew.
About the same time, Israeli land and air forces attacked the Golan Heights in a well-planned and executed strike. The attack, the recall, the jamming, the pounding, the torpedoes. Somehow the Liberty survived. And almost immediately, the second part of the outrage, the cover-up by the Israeli and the American government, began.
You know, just thinking about how we had been so shafted by our government, the Israeli government, told to shut up, no chance to talk to one another. And it angered me. It really, really angered me.
On the day of the attack, I tried to coordinate communications. The Israelis had taken out all of our transmitting antennas. My RMs, not knowing any better during the strafing runs, were stringing long wires so that we could get an SOS out. And thanks to them, the ones that survived, we did get an SOS out to the USS America. Without George Golden, the ship would have sunk. Had it sunk, I assume when debris washed ashore the next day, it would have been blamed on Egypt. Many, many miracles that day. I shouldn't be here. After watertight integrity had been established and the hatch had been sailed, They reopened it as I floated by. Bud Schnell, went down and pulled me out. I'm just supposed to be there. None of us should be alive today.
Much to my dismay, I personally witnessed the machine gunning of life rafts as they floated by the Israeli torpedo boat crew members, raked the life rafts thoroughly with machine gun fire, making sure that if there had been anyone in the life raft, they would not have survived.
After the Israeli torpedo blew a huge hole in the Liberty, the last 3 life rafts were put over the side. Israeli torpedo boats sank 2 of those rafts, took the 3rd aboard. We were left with no rafts, nothing that could float. Shooting life rafts on a ship in distress is a war crime.
Worst of all is what our government is doing to cover all this whole thing up. When I heard that Johnson, in the heat of the battle, was telling the Admiral Geis of the 6th Fleet that he didn't give a damn if every man drowned and the ship sinks. He said, I don't give a damn if every man drowns and the ship sinks. I don't want to embarrass our allies. That made me sort of wonder, with unmarked planes, how did he know it was our allies?
We should have had planes on site 45 minutes into this 2-hour attack, and they never showed. So did Israel apologize and then continue to attack us for an hour and 15 more minutes, or were we being lied to as to the conditions of why they recalled the planes? And because of the top-secret operation of Liberty, and it being the sensitivity of it being Israel, our closest ally, who accidentally attacked the ship, that we are ordered not to grant any interviews. You know, don't discuss this among yourselves, referring to the attack. Don't get over on the beach drinking in the bars and running your mouth. And he says, in fact, if you go ashore in Malta, you will remove your ship's name from your jersey or go ashore in civilian clothes. Well, another light goes off in my mind. Here's a flag admiral in the middle of the gung-ho 6th Fleet telling enlisted men to go ashore in civilian clothes that we're not even authorized to possess. And he says, oh, that we won't be singled out and be asked questions about it. And he says, don't discuss the attack among yourselves. Don't write your friends back home about it. He says, in fact, when you get back home, don't even discuss it with your wife and family. And he said quite sternly, just forget it ever happened. And he says that repercussions for violating these orders to silence could result in your court-martial, imprisonment for violating national security, or worse.
So what do these animals do? They come to these young men that were just attacked in an unprovoked attempt to murder each and every last one of them. And then they threatened them with their lives if they were ever to speak of these things. Their friends were lost in this battle, this unprovoked stabbing in their back. They have bullet wounds, shrapnel stuck in their bodies for the rest of their lives. And then they're threatened by their superiors that if they ever speak of these things, that they will be dealt with harshly. And they know what that meant, because they certainly wouldn't question for a moment as to whether or not these people would kill them if they spoke. They just attacked a U.S. naval ship and tried to kill every last person on board. Now, if you were on that ship and someone threatened you with your life if you spoke up, I think you would take them seriously. Now, we should all be outraged by this on so many levels, on the fact that our ally would kill us, unprovoked, that they would do so that we would send more young men and women off to die, fighting an enemy that is not even our own.
I noticed a very large helicopter with Israeli markings hovering very close to us. I looked in the door of the helicopter, which was open, and I could see a number of Israelis carrying automatic weapons. They had just heard that the Sixth Fleet had finally launched aircraft to come to our assistance, and so they just left the scene.
Helicopter gunships, I'm sure in my mind, would have picked off survivors if we'd abandoned ship. They were sent there to finish us off. The aircraft were sent to make us incommunicado, so we couldn't send an SOS out. The torpedo boats were sent to sink us, and the helicopters were sent to pick off survivors, so there'd be no trace. It was a perfectly executed military operation. If you look at the photographs of the Liberty after the attack, on the first strafing run, they used heat-seeking missiles that took out the tuning section of every transmitting antenna on the ship. In less than 2 seconds, they had taken out all our communication capability.